Hi guys, I am going to change Maci. I want to just get this done and do like a little chat. So in my last video, it was the box opening, and I mentioned just like a bunch of crap was going on, so that's why I have no pep in my step right now. Just a bunch of crap that's been going on. So I'm going to change Maci, and I'll talk about that. First, tell you what she's wearing, and then I'll talk about what I'm going to put her in. So first off, she has the super cute, what brand is it? Gymboree. It's 6 to 12 months. It's a little bit big on her. Bunny sweater. I'm going to take that off of her. And it's just a white sweater. It's a thin sweater, so it had been kind of bouncing around temperatures, and thought that would look cute on her. And then she has that llama outfit that I purchased, and Crystal purchased as well. The llama overall outfit. So she's got that on, and I am going to put her in this. This is a Carter's Just One You Target brand outfit. I'm going to put her in this outfit that I picked up at Carter's, the aqua, kind of like an aqua onesie with frilly sleeves. And there's an embroidered llama on it, and then like a fabric blanket, and then it's got the matching shorts. I did not grab socks for her, but that's okay. And then I've got this Cat and Jack, just white bonnet. I was going to put on her with it. Oh, where did I put your passies? I do not remember where I put your passies, so you will get your llama passy back. Well, you're going to be wearing a llama anyways, girl, so it don't matter. Okay, so now that we got past that, so what has been going on lately? So a few weeks ago, my friend and I were running errands. And usually we take her car because, well, I have a driver's license. I have driven since I was 15 years old. I hate driving. I absolutely hate driving. I can do it. I do it. But I'm not fond of it. So anyways, her and I, when we go places, she usually drives. She's fine with that. I'm fine with that. Driving, just, like I said, I can do it. I do it. I do drive in places I don't really like to, if I have to. But driving gives me anxiety. Like, up until a couple weeks ago, I had only ever driven my husband's truck once, and we have owned it for almost 4 years. So, I'll drive my vehicles. I would drive my van places. I'm more comfortable driving it than I am our truck. I'm really not comfortable driving other people's vehicles. My parents' vehicles are a little bit different. But, like, I've had to drive friends' vehicles for one reason or another, and I'll do it, but it's just not preferable. So anyways, her and I went and ran our errands, and we were driving back. My van was acting perfectly fine, and I went to take her home, and in her area, the community she lives in is actually just outside of town. It is not part of town. Eventually it'll be annexed into the town, but right now it's a mud district. For those that don't know what mud district is they do not pay city taxes. They only pay county taxes. They do, however, get like city utilities. So they get city water, garbage, recycling, stuff like that. And they just have to pay, because they're a mud district, they just have to pay a higher rate. So like me being in town, if we both use the same amount of water in a month, her bill will be $50 higher than my bill because I am in town and she is in a mud. district. So anyways, I went to drop her off in her community, and they have been having, through this whole COVID thing, I'm not going to take her onesie off, aren't I? Yes. They have been having food trucks come out and park in the community and sell their food. So they've had Kona Ice a few times. They've had the donut truck with, oh my god, I went there for the donut truck. Sorry, Maisie. The donut truck was, oh, delicious. So that day they were having, what is it? Smoked turkey legs. Barbecue guy. Now, mind you, I absolutely love smoked turkey. I love smoked turkey legs. Thanksgiving, my husband's dad's ex-wife, Nana, we always go there for Thanksgiving. I prefer to go there for Thanksgiving because she gets this fantastic smoked turkey. Absolutely love it. Okay, I really need to get it just a sleeveless white onesie for her. Didn't realize how big that neckline was. So anyways, we stopped to get the turkey legs, and it didn't seem, and nothing seemed really off. Turn off the van, go get in line, get our smoked turkey leg, go get back in the van, and the van won't start. I'm like, what the heck? So I try to start it again, and then my friend yells, oh my god, there's smoke coming from under the hood. So I pop the hood open, we both jump out, we go running over, I get the hood open, and there's this white smoke billowing out. So I'm like, okay, white smoke is not ideal, but at least it's not black smoke, so it's not an active flame. So, although we ran over to the guy selling the smoked turkey, and I'm like, do you guys have a fire extinguisher in case we need it? Okay. Finally found the spray bottles. This is spray and conditioner. So the guy's like, yeah, but like, what's going on? And kind of explained it quickly. And so one of the guys selling stuff came over with the fire extinguisher to check on the van. And he's like, I don't want to spray it unless I absolutely have to, because I don't want to ruin your engine. So he just kind of stood over by us while I oversprayed her hair. Oh well, it's needing conditioned. So he stood by us. My friend called her husband to have her husband come over, and her husband brought a fire extinguisher. Meanwhile, I am trying to get a hold of my husband, who is at home, and he was not answering his phone, so I'm stressing. I'm literally shaking. My friend is trying to calm me down. She had to run home because when her husband came over, he left the boys at their house, so she had to run home to see if the neighbor could watch her boys quick while she came back. So, I didn't realize I was doing that to the blanket. So her husband is over there. Like, I'm still shaking. I'm trying to get a hold of my husband still. He's still not answering his phone. Her husband's kind of teasing me, trying to get me to calm down. Just talking to me. And finally I get a hold of my husband. By the time he gets there, he jumps in the van, and the van starts right up like nothing was wrong. Oh, before I got to that point. So when the guy from the smoked turkey leg truck comes over, he's like, were any check engine lights on? Like, we're trying to troubleshoot this. And I'm like, there was no check engine lights. Well, then when he was standing there, I went to I just put my key in the ignition at that point. Well, then the check engine light came on. So anyways, my husband gets there, he jumps in, he starts it right up, and it starts up like nothing happened. Like, what the heck? And I'm like, well, you need to follow me home just to make sure nothing happens. So we drive home, and as we drive home, the van is still driving, it's still running, but my battery light comes on. I'm like, what the heck? Well, at the point where I'm standing on the side of the road with my hood open looking into this engine, I did not realize where Dodge had put the alternators on their vans. All vehicles I have owned in the past, the alternator's back on the firewall and easy access to get to. Every vehicle I've owned, I've helped my dad change alternators in other vehicles of mine. I did not realize Dodge put the alternator on the bottom side of the Caravan's engine. It's a pain in the butt to get to. And that's where the smoke was coming from, but I didn't know this at the time. So after the battery light comes on, the check engine light never comes back on. After the battery light comes on, I'm like, it has to be the alternator. Hopefully I have enough power in the battery to get home, because at this point I realize my van is just running off the battery. So I turn everything off that I can. I turned off the radio, I turned off the air conditioner, I rolled down the windows. Anything and everything that could be off in that van, I turned off to make sure I had enough power to get home. I get home, everything is pointing to the alternator. So the next morning, my husband goes over to AutoZone to get the alternator, a new alternator. So he goes and buys one. He comes home, he swaps it out. And he's like, okay, everything's fine, your van's fixed, you're good to go. I'm like, great, thanks. So he, I don't know if I want this in her mouth or not. I'll put it there for now. I have to go to the post office the next day. So I get in the van and I start driving to the post office, and all of a sudden, bing, and my battery light comes on again. I'm like, the alternator's not working. Something's not right. Is this the correct alternator? So I don't even go to the post office. I instantly turn around and drive home. Grab the truck, leave the van here, and go do what I was going to do, mailing some packages. My husband then has been busy. He ended up having to work his days off that week, so he didn't even have time to be able to look at the van for a week. Last week rolls around, he's able to take the van apart, and he's looking at it, and he's like, this alternator doesn't look right. So he takes the new alternator back to AutoZone and is like, okay, I'm still having this issue. The alternator isn't charging the battery. I don't know if there's something wrong with this alternator. So they test the alternator. The alternator, they're like, well, it's showing it's working fine. And my husband's like, well, it's not in the van. So they give him a new alternator. They swap it out. So he comes home, puts it in, and once again, he drove it. He's like, I'm going to drive it. He has a personal trainer. He was going to his personal trainer. Right now, gyms can be open. The gym that we go to, because of the cold, well, they were planning on doing this anyways, but they bumped everything up. The gym had just undergone new management, or an owner, and the owner decided to get rid of all the previous equipment and get new equipment. So he, during COVID, sold all the old equipment, and they're still waiting for the new equipment to come in. That should be in a few weeks from now. But the personal trainers have a whole nother area that they can do the personal training stuff. So they have their own equipment, as well as they're in a separate area from the actual gym. And they only take one person at a time. So my husband's going to his trainer since the gyms have been able to open. So he goes to his trainer, he takes the van, and of course he leaves his phone at home. I get a phone call from him, or from his personal trainer's phone, saying, meet me at the dealership. The battery light came on as I was driving here. And I'm like, well, will it start now? And he goes, yeah, it'll start, but the dealership is closer to the gym than taking it home. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So we drive over to the dealership. The kids and I go over there. I drive the truck. We meet him there. And he pulls in, and I'm like looking at everything. And I'm like, dude, the dealership itself is open, but the shop is closed. They closed at 6. And he's like, what? I'm like, they closed at 6. And he's like, well, I guess we're going home. So he started the van back up and drove it home. I followed him. It was able to get home perfectly fine. Well, aside from the battery light being on. So we park it in the driveway, and he's like, well, I guess we'll just take it back tomorrow. So I'm like, fine, whatever. So we take it back. We start the next morning we get up to go to the dealership. I tell him, I'm like, I don't have a good feeling about this. Let's just get a tow truck. We have tow truck coverage on the van. Let's just put the van on the street. We should have enough power to do that. And then we'll have them take it to the dealership. And he's like, no, 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 it's fine. It'll drive. It'll drive. Just follow me. So he gets in the van and starts driving. I get in the kids in the truck, and we start driving. And he's a little bit ahead of me, and all of a sudden, we're on interstate, and I see him pull off to the side. So I pull off to the side too, and the van completely dies. There's white smoke coming out everywhere. So he gets out of the truck, or out of the van. We knew it was something with the radiator, with the white smoke. So we get he gets into the truck. I call the insurance. Like I said, we had tow coverage, so they send a tow truck to come pick us up. We drop it off at the shop. Shop calls us and says, hey, what's going on with this alternator? I know you said you needed it changed, but this isn't even the correct alternator for this engine. Now, mind you, my husband went twice to AutoZone. The first time getting an alternator, putting it in, not working right, taking it back, and then insisting that it's the correct alternator, and then just swapping it out for another one and gave him the other one. They sold him the wrong alternator. My van, there is 2 or 3 different types of engines. And they were selling him the alternator for the year in a Caravan, but not my engine. And my husband kept saying, this is the engine type, this is the engine type. Well, apparently they didn't listen. So anyways, they call my husband, and they're like, they called him and said it's the alternator. They changed it out. And they're like, you should be good to go. We're going to take it on a test drive now. We'll call you back to come pick it up. So then about an hour goes by, and he didn't get a call back. And he's like, what the heck's going on? So he called. And they're like, well, we took it for a test drive, and it's still having issues. The computer is shorted somewhere because of the incorrect alternator. So how it works is the computer of the car regulates the alternator, which then charges the battery. So there's a short now in the computer, so that's why the battery is not charging from the alternator. Now, and they're like, we can take care of this, but the problem is we don't have the part on stock. It is back ordered. We are going to try and get one from another dealership, because the dealership that we took it to has like 4 other Dodge dealerships. So they were going to try to see if one of the other ones had the computer for it in stock. That was Thursday night. Friday they called and they said, well, we have good news and bad news. Good news is we found the computer. Bad news is we won't be getting it till Monday afternoon sometime. And this is where I was kind of upset with my husband, because I'm like, can you ask them if we can get a loaner car, because I need a loaner car. He never did, man. So we just put up with one vehicle over the weekend. So weekend rolls around. No, the vans should be back on Monday. Thinking everything's fine. We then over the weekend go to Costco, and by Costco there's a Super Target, so we decided to stop there. We had a few things we needed to get from Costco. We picked up what we needed. We went to the Super Target, picked up a few things there, and then we get home, and when we left, Teffy was in her chair. Now, I know that I have the 2 For Moms bounceroos. I've got one for my babies that is in our bedroom. That's the one that isn't broken, that still has its vibrating piece on it. The other one that I have doesn't have the vibrating part on it, and I swapped the covers because I like the cover on the broken one better than the cover on mine. Well, I had it sitting in the living room, and Teffy has claimed it as her bed. I'm okay with it, so I just moved it next to my desk. While I'm at my desk, she sleeps in this baby bouncer. So when we left, she was in the baby bouncer because I was on my computer before we left. Everything was fine. Nothing was unusual. We get home, and I sit down to eat supper, and I look at Teffy, and I'm like, her one side of her face is all swollen. Her mouth looks distorted. Like, I'm thinking, did the cat have a stroke or something? So, like, I'm freaking out. So I grab her. I go running to my husband, who's in our bedroom. I'm like, what's going on with this cat? I know she won't let me look at her as I'm holding her, so please look at her. So we're feeling around. She's kind of looking at us like, what the heck are you doing? And my husband gets to her mouth, and he tries to open her mouth up, and she like keeps pulling her head back. She will not open her mouth up, and she'll meow and she'll yawn and she'll lick, but she won't let us open her mouth up. He was able to get it open a little bit and noticed her one canine, instead of going up and down, it is now kind of sticking forward. So I panic. I'm like, oh my God, we've already got these bills piling up on the van. Now we have to take the cat to the vet. So I'm thinking, it's weekend, it's only emergency vet. So I'm out of my mind. I'm like, well, at least I know it's not like a stroke or something. It's something with her mouth. So I decide to give her some wet cat food just to make sure she can still eat. She, in fact, later on we figured out she's still eating the dry cat food, but she was gobbling up her wet cat food. And while she's eating, her wet cat food sits by the water, so she'd go over and take a drink and then come back and eat some more wet cat food, and she's going back and forth between the two. So while she was doing that, I decided to call the emergency vet. And I'm like, okay, this is what's going on. We don't know what she did to it. And the vet said, well, you just said she's eating and drinking fine. And I go, well, yeah. And they go, well, you have 2 options. Being she's eating and drinking fine and she's acting normal, you can wait, or you can come in and we can take a look. Although there's not much we can probably do at our facility for this. The only thing we can probably do is give her some antibiotics and painkillers, and then you'll have to see your regular vet anyways. And I'm like, well, how much would it cost to get this started now? And they said, just to be seen, because it was after 6 p.m., just to be seen on the weekends, it would cost $250 just for the vet to look at her. Would not include any treatment. If there is something they could do for it, would not count any medications, would not count any anything but just like a physical. As well as I would have to purchase the medications through them if they had them on stock, because all the pharmacies were closed at this point, like the People pharmacies. So some people that don't know, some medications that animals can take are human medications. So like if they put her on an antibiotic and it comes in a capsule form, they can order the capsule form at a CVS or such pharmacy. You can just break open the capsule and put it in some food that they're going to eat, put it in a treat. There's different ways to get animals to take pills. So there's always that option, but it's always more expensive to buy medication, especially from an emergency vet. So after discussing it with my husband, we decided let's just wait. So we waited. So it came to this morning. I was talking to friends, and my cats have not seen a vet since we moved here. Before we moved here, they saw our vet in Minot. And in Minot, they had 3-year rabies shots. So I didn't need to get any rabies shots after we moved here because, or they didn't need to go to the vet because they didn't need any shots. So we never really looked for a vet. And then came last fall when we were moving, and it was right around the time that they needed their shots anyways. I had to call around and price stuff out because, you know, being a moves aren't cheap. I budgeted a certain amount, and I had called this one vet, and I was basically lied to. I had to pay double what I was quoted. So since then, I still have not found a vet. So I asked my friend, I'm like, you have your dogs, where do you take them? And she's like, well, I take them to this vet, but honestly, lately I'm not impressed with them. I'm thinking of switching to this vet. So, okay, I'm going to stop here. We'll come back in a second because my battery's flashing. Okay, guys, I thought I'd give you a different shot, give you the Teffy shot, so you can see right on the one side. You can see kind of right here on her lip. You can't see the tooth sticking out, but you can see the difference in her mouth. She looks angry all the time now. So, yeah, this is her bouncer. So anyways, she goes, we're thinking of switching to this other vet. So I'm like, okay. So I looked up information on that vet last night, and I was looking up like Yelp reviews and such on this vet that she was talking about. So this morning I get up when they were supposed to open, and I start calling him, and all of a sudden, every time I try to call them, I get this message that this phone call cannot be completed as dialed. Please try again later. And I'm thinking, what the heck? That is strange. Like, with everything going on, knowing my luck, there's something either wrong with my phone, or there's something wrong with our phone account. Who knows what's going on at this point? So I call my husband, who's at work, and he didn't answer, but it rang. So I call my mom and talk to her. Clearly, my phone is working. I try to call the vet again, still getting this message, like trying to figure out what the heck's wrong with my phone, Googling all sorts of things. And my friend calls, and I tell her what's going on, so then she tries to call the vet as well and gets the same message. So I'm like, okay, it's not my phone. It's clearly something on their side. So went about my day. A little bit later, tried again, called the vet to see if I could make an appointment for today. And the lady's like, sorry, we don't have any appointments for today, and we don't have any appointments for tomorrow. And I'm like, crap. After explaining to her what's going on, and she goes, well, being the cat doesn't seem to be in any pain. And I know you guys can see like this drippiness on her eyes. She has allergies. All of our allergies are going nuts recently because the weather changed. But I digress. She's like, tomorrow you can bring her in between 8 and 5. We do have appointments. They take priority, but we do have walk-ins. We have emergency walk-ins and we have non-emergency walk-ins. So if you want to bring her in tomorrow between 8 and 5, you can do so. So my plan is to bring her in between 8 and 5 to figure out what's going on. My biggest concern is that there's an infection there. Like, let's see. Teffy, will you let me see? Yeah, you can kind of, her tooth is right underneath her lip. But she's eating, she's drinking. There. You gonna yawn? You can kind of see it there. So I don't know if they're gonna end up pulling her tooth or if they're just gonna leave it, since it doesn't seem to really be bothering her. So I'll have to wait and see what the vet says. As well as I know that we need to get her anal gland drained again. So, poor little kitty's got to go to the vet tomorrow. So I'm thinking, okay, crap's really rolling downhill. Well, I get a phone call from the dealership saying my van's ready. My husband gets off work. He's like, well, let's go pick it up. So we go pick it up. I take my son. He takes our daughter. I stop to get stuff to eat for supper. He's got to take my daughter to, or our daughter, to softball practice. So as I'm driving on interstate, something just seemed off with the van, and for some reason I looked over at the gauge, the temperature gauge on the van, and I'm like, something's off. And I notice it's running hot. It's not overheating, but it's running close to. So I pull off interstate, go to get Schlotzsky's, which is what my daughter kept asking for. And as I'm at the Schlotzsky's line, I keep smelling antifreeze. And it's still kind of bouncing back between where it normally sits and running hot. And today it was 100 degrees with heat index, it was 105. So as I'm waiting for our food in the drive-through line, because currently they're only open for drive-through still, I call my husband and tell him that. And he's like, well, you know, it's just got to reaccumulate. The antifreeze you're probably smelling is, they maybe had dropped some antifreeze when, spilled some antifreeze when they were putting antifreeze in the van. I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I start driving home from Schlotzsky's, and every time I hit the accelerator, the fan on my air conditioner was like it would just stop. I'm like, something is not right here. So I turned off the air conditioner, I turned off the radio, turned off everything I could again, rolled down the windows, and like I said, it was 105 with the heat index. I'm like, oh my God, this is miserable. So we get home, I park the van, call my husband, tell him what's going on. And he's like, well, wait a minute. When I took it there, I forgot to put the topper back on the engine. Now, I don't know if that's going to cause any of these issues. It couldn't, I don't know. So he's like, I'll deal with it tomorrow. I'll just put the cover back on it tomorrow and see if that fixes the problem. So he said either that, or when they put the filter back on, they didn't put the filter in correctly, therefore you're not getting the vacuum suction for the AC. So he's going to take a look at it tomorrow. Then after we get home, I'm reading the paperwork from the dealership, and right on it, it states that they had to replace the alternator because it was the incorrect alternator, as well as they had to replace the CPM, which is the computer, due to wrong alternator. So basically the wrong alternator shorted it out. So now I have to have the pleasure of calling AutoZone customer service to figure out how we're going to handle this, because we couldn't even take the alternator back because the dealership needed the old alternator that was in it to send in. Because for people that are not in the car business, alternators can be fixed and then resold. So it's called a core. They needed the core to send in. Every time like a dealership, or like when you buy the alternator at AutoZone, there's called a core fee. Now when you bring the alternator back, the damaged one, you get that core fee returned. So my husband had already taken the alternator to AutoZone to get his core fee back, the one he had purchased there. Well, the dealership now needs needs an alternator to submit for the core fee. So now we're stuck without a core to return, because if AutoZone could give us our core back, we could get our alternator back and then return it. But as well as, I'm like, how are we going to remedy the alternator from AutoZone only costing $400? Now I have to pay $700 at the dealership, plus I have to pay an additional $2,000. Yes, you heard that right, for the computer, because we were sold the wrong alternator. So I'm going to see how they can remedy that, because we've got paperwork from the dealership stating that it was the wrong alternator, and that's what caused the computer to go bad. So anyways, that's kind of why I've just been kind of blah lately, is kind of dealing with all this. It's like, can this year get any worse? So I know this went really long. If you're at this point, thank you for still watching, and I will see everyone in the next video. Bye!